Hey writer, if you're ready to level up, then buckle up. Get your pen and paper ready. It's time for another episode of the Art and Business of Writing podcast. Hey writer, if you're ready to level up, then buckle up. Get your pen and paper ready. It's time for another episode of the Art and Business of Writing podcast.
Hey guys, welcome back to another edition of the Art and Business of Writing podcast, where today I am joined by author Dawn Brotherton. Dawn Brotherton is an award-winning author and featured speaker at writing and publishing seminars. When it comes to exceptional writing, she draws on her experience as a colonel retired from the U.S. Air Force, as well as a softball coach and Girl Scout leader. Her variety of interests has led her to a variety of genres, including mystery, romance, young adult fantasy, middle grade sports, picture books, and nonfiction. Please join me in welcoming Dawn Brotherton as we talk about how to write the story from within. Hey, Dawn, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So tell us how you became an award-winning author. What does that journey look like?
Well, it started a long time ago. Okay, I won't make it that bad for you. But I was in the Air Force for 28 years. And during my first duty assignment, I had a stalker. I had somebody that was breaking into my house and messing with my phones. And all my friends would say, "You've got to write that down. That's such a great story." And I played with it for a while and I wrote a little bit, and then I sat on it for a while and I wrote a little bit. And when I finally got the story all out, it still wasn't sellable. It wasn't marketable. So I went back through it again and I killed off some people and made it more marketable. And that became the obsession. That was my first book. But then I thought, well, I wrote what I know. That's all there is. I don't have any more. And people kept bugging me for more Jackie Austin, which is the protagonist of my book. And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. And then one day I got mad at my husband. So I killed him in the second book. So it does, he hasn't read it, so it's fine. He'll never know. He's not going to see it coming. But in Wind the Clock, Jackie goes off to Germany. And so I just started with what I know and just expounded on that. And then I got into softball books because my girls were playing softball and I played when I was younger. So I started writing middle grade softball books because there really are not enough sports books with girls on the cover. I found that as a really weak spot on the bookshelves. So the Lady Tigers takes care of that. And I've got 5 in that series and loved it. But then I wanted to try a little romance, see how that worked. And the funny thing is I won some awards for Untimely Love, but I didn't write it under my own name initially because I was still in the Air Force. So even though I won these awards, I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't do any advertising or anything. But once I retired in 2016, I brought them back out, and now it is republished under my own name. My career's been all over the place, basically.
You said some really important things, and I think I want you to talk about those more because a lot of writers get caught up in, well, what should I write about, or what kind of story should I tell? And you talked about a few minutes ago just writing about what you know. Like, how did that help you to get books written?
Well, obviously, it's much better for the setting because you can see it in your mind because you've been there before. So that really helps with description. And one great exercise I recommend to people is just going to a restaurant and sitting down by yourself and watching people and making up stories about the people nearby where you can't necessarily see or hear their conversation, but you can see their body language. So you have to try to figure out how to describe that. And so it's a really wonderful exercise. But going back to writing what you know, obviously you're an expert in your own thing, and it doesn't have to be true. Like I said, I started with the stalker story. That part was true, but I promise you, nobody I know got killed. So you just use your imagination from there. But the scenery and everything and the military life, obviously, I lived that for 28 years. So that was easier for me to write about.
I really appreciate you talking about that because writing about what you know is very important. It's a good starting point. Because I think we all get drawn towards that. We get drawn towards like the person with the weight loss journey on the bookshelf, or the person who had like overcome some sort of adversity in their life. And we get drawn to those stories, but don't think we have those stories too, and we do.
Exactly. And memoirs are really big right now.
There's something else you talked about that I thought was really good, especially in the current climate, is just representation. Like you talked about, there wasn't books specifically for girls softball, and you decided to get in there and write those books. How important do you think it is, or how excited does it make you to see that we're having like kind of this thing with more representation in books?
Oh, it's fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. And I was at a market not too long ago, and this girl came up to me and she's like, I read your book. I'm so excited. I never liked to read before. And this made me, I mean, she was crying, Chris. She was so excited. And it just touched my heart like you would not believe. It was wonderful. But you'll see a kind of a trend on through all my books where with a female protagonist, because even my military stories, most military stories are men and wartime. Mine is not that. It is a military setting, but it's a female protagonist. And I don't want to say it's current, but it's, murder mystery kind of thing, not about during war. So that's a little bit of a different twist too. So they can learn a little bit about the military without having to go to war for it.
Awesome. Now, one of your most recent awards is the Literary Titan Book Award for Eastover Treasures. Tell us about the book and then how you won the award.
So I really love Literary Titan because one of the things they do is they grade the book, so to speak. So you're not competing against other authors to beat somebody out. You're competing against a rubric to see if you're deserving of the medal. And Eastover Treasures is my newest book. It came out in June. It is a cozy mystery. Have you ever heard of a cozy?
I have not.
So a cozy mystery is a real light, easy read. It's typically faster, nothing graphic. So no graphic violence, sex, or swearing. I know I'm showing my age, but have you ever seen the TV show Murder, She Wrote?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a cozy mystery, just to kind of try to set the stage for you. And so is Miss Marple of Agatha Christie, if you remember that. So little towns, that kind of stuff. So in Eastover Treasure, Ari and her sewing sisters are at a quilt retreat. A storm rolls in. They get stuck inside the manor house where they find a diary that was written during the Civil War days. And inside the diary, Mary has left clues to a hidden treasure. So they go on a treasure hunt. And it's just a fun story. And I'm a big quilter. And I was at a quilt retreat it was at the time called Eastover Christian Retreat Center. It's now called The Edge, and it's in Surrey County, so not too far from Williamsburg. And a storm was rolling in. I was out for my daily walk, and I just started thinking about this story. And I'm thrilled to death. I dedicated it to the Colonial Peacemakers, which is my quilt guild.
That's phenomenal. But again, it goes back to that writing what you know. Like you were inspired by something
Exactly.
that you knew, and it became a book.
Absolutely.
And so you've also won the bronze medal this year for The Road to Publishing from the Military Writers Association of America. Tell us about that book too, and how you won that award.
Well, let me start with the military writers.
Yeah.
It is a fantastic group that I stumbled on really from a friend of a friend. But they do a lot of stuff online, so it doesn't matter where you live. You do not even have to be military to join, as a matter of fact. But they have classes online. They do conferences once a year, writing conferences. But it's a great group of writers to just exchange ideas with. So put that plug in for them. And the road to publishing basically outlines the difference between self-publishing, hybrid, and traditional. In this digital age, it used to be you had to go get an agent, go to New York City to make it big. But now with the digital age, you don't have to do that. There's absolutely nothing wrong with self-publishing as long as you treat it as a business and you do the right things. You get an editor, you get good cover art, you do what you're supposed to do. And so this book kind of outlines the pros and cons of each of those and helps the writer decide which path they want to take. Because depending on their goal, like I had one author who she teaches classes. So every time she teaches a class, she sells 100 books. It makes no sense for her to try to go traditional because she has a set audience and she can make a lot more money by just doing the self or hybrid route. Hybrid, by the way, is like outsourcing. It's like self-publishing, but outsourcing all the things you don't want to do. You pay somebody else to do those for you.
Talk about that a little bit, because I feel like people really don't understand the hybrid model. Like, I think people look at it and say, well, don't pay to publish your book, don't pay to publish your book. But at the same time, you're going to pay for the same services regardless whether you pay a hybrid publisher to help you or not. Plus, you'll get more services on top of that. So can you talk about that a little bit?
Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for pointing that out, because so many people don't get that. Yes, even if you're self-publishing, you are going to pay. You should be paying for an editor, cover art, your ISBN, the number that goes on the back of your book. There's a bunch of little steps. The cool thing about going with a hybrid is, yes, you're paying somebody else to do it, but number one, it's probably going to be a lot faster because they know what they're doing, where you might have to be learning from scratch. And you get, like you said, the extra services. They might be able to get you into the Library of Congress. There's a little bit more, I don't want to say credibility, that's not the right word, but it's more professionalism. They know what they're doing. Your book looks neater. They know all the rules about layout. So yeah, paying somebody to do your work and paying one person instead of having to go find 5 different people for each little part is actually, it's really a good deal.
Yeah, and when you mention credibility, I think just having the imprint on the spine says a lot to consumers.
It does, but I do want to caution people to not do what we call a vanity press. They're the ones where you send them your book and they will print it exactly how it looks no matter what. That is a vanity press. They charge a lot of money and you do not want to do it because it looks horrible and people can tell. So you just have to be careful that you know what you're getting.
All right, now the Military Writers Association of America, do you have to be military affiliated? Do you have to be military yourself? Or can you just write about the military and be a part of the group? Is there any stipulation to that?
There isn't any stipulation at all. And you don't even have to be writing about the military because the road to publishing is not about the military. I think they started it to try to help veterans get their stories out, but it has grown so much. I mean, there's poetry, there's children's books, there's all kinds of things in there.
Oh, very
So
cool.
nope, no military affiliation needed.
So I'm a big nonfiction guy. Beyond writing short stories in junior high school and high school, I find fiction writing almost intimidating to a degree. But how did you become a cross-disciplinary author who writes fiction, nonfiction, YA, and children's books?
I just think it's because my interest varies so much. I like to read a lot of different things, but it's funny, Chris, nonfiction is not my favorite. So we're at opposite ends there. I absolutely love to escape to a fiction world. And it just depends on what my interests are at the time. So my most recent one, well, actually, I've got 2 coming out. But I got to tell you about The Dragons of Silent Mountain, because that is my YA fantasy, and I hope to have it by Christmas. We'll see what the editor says. But it is, Ashton has grown up hearing about the stories of dragons, when dragons filled the sky her whole life. But then when people start disappearing and she starts seeing things in the sky like fire, then she decides she has to go find out if these tales are true. The cool thing about this whole story is I love dragons. I love fantasy books. Those are my favorite. But anytime I wanted to write one, I couldn't think of a fresh idea because I've read so many that I kept thinking, oh, that's been done. Oh, that's been done. But of course, it's fantasy. It can't all be done. So my daughter, when she was 17, she wrote me this poem called The Silent Mountain. And then she wrote me 3 opening scenes, basically, to a dragon story. And I took one of those and I ran with it. And it took me 2 years, but it's finally coming. And I'm just so excited.
I'm glad you said that whole piece about it's been done, but you did it anyway. Because a lot of writers stumble upon that too. They'll look up something and say, well, someone's already written about this, or someone's already got a book on this. Like, does it even matter that someone's written on things? And what do you do when you come up with, like, when that stuff starts to invade your mind?
Oh, I totally understand where you're going with that one. You just have to read. I would suggest at that point is to read different things to get out of that genre for a little bit that you want to write in. You should definitely read the genre you want to write in. Okay. So you can get the feel and understand what people like, because even though there are so many out there because people love them. There's a pattern to it. And so you have to learn what that is. But if you're getting stuck in that mentality of, oh, it's already been done, I highly recommend go read something else. Try a different genre, whether it's mystery or cozy mystery or whatever, to kind of break your mind from that trap and then go back and try again.
Yeah, because I always look at that sort of thing as like proof of concept to me. Like to me, I'm like, oh, great, it's done, which means I should be able to do it too.
Yeah, exactly. Because there are no new stories, is kind of
Yeah.
what has been said. Everything's out there and ideas are not copyrighted. You just have to make it your own. So look at what you really like about this story, and this story, and maybe you can combine them somehow to come up with your own twist.
And I'm also sensing this theme that we've got going on too. Like that didn't fall on me flatly. That your daughter gave you the poem, and once again, you wrote a story about something else you knew, something else that was
Yes.
familiar to you. So if you guys are listening, there's a theme going on here that just learn to write what you know. So do you have so you talked about liking to write fiction. Do you have a preferred vertical within fiction that you like writing in? Do you prefer the YA? Do you prefer the children? Do you prefer the mysteries, the romance?
Oh, I do not prefer the romance. I'll narrow it down for you. I think so. I am working on the 3rd in the Jackie Austin mystery series. So that's going to be my 3rd and probably final military background mystery. But I've also started on the 2nd in the cozy series. I really like the cozy. I enjoyed that a lot because in that I hit on some historical fiction. So that was fun to do a lot of the research. And for somebody that doesn't like nonfiction, I thought that was pretty eye-opening for me.
So walk us through your writing process, Dawn. Are you a plotter or a pantser? And then, where does your writing process begin?
Well, it begins with just an idea, and I will ruminate on that idea for a year easily, just playing it over in my mind. And every time I get a little bit further on what I want to do. But when I actually start writing, I was totally a pantser when I started. My characters take the story wherever they want it to go. And sometimes I find myself going, well, dang it, I didn't mean to do that. And I have to figure it out. But I have so much fun with that because when my characters ask a question, I'm thinking to myself, that is exactly what the reader's going to want to know. And so I just go with it. And I have totally enjoyed it. One thing that I found very helpful, whether you're a pantser or a plotter, is after the story is over with. So I did this with Eastover. I had kind of a rough idea. I mean, I have it in my mind where I expect the story to be going, but how I get there is kind of not plotted. But after I was finished with Eastover, I went back through it at that time after the first or second draft, and I outlined the book from there, which was awesome because it helped me plug any holes I might have had. I went, oh, I asked a question here. I got to make sure I answer it later. And that was a really good exercise to close out the book.
Ooh, that is an interesting way of doing it. So, I would consider you, based on all your full body of work, to be a pretty prolific writer. Like, how many books have you published?
10,
10?
with 2 more coming. And I'm in 2 or 3 anthologies. The other book that I have coming out is a picture book. It's called If I Look Like You. And it is Scout the chameleon dragon feels like she has to change her appearance in order to fit in. And it is so cute, Chris. I can't wait for you to see it. I have a Disney artist that did the illustrations for me, Chad Thompson, and he's fantastic. Those should be out. I'm just waiting for them from the printer. So beginning of November.
As an author, where do you locate your art people? Like, where do you find your illustrators?
Sometimes I just meet them at book signings. They'll come up and they'll be chatting with me and they'll say, "Oh, I'm an illustrator." I'm like, "Well, send me your portfolio and let me look at it." One of the illustrators that I found is actually a friend, a daughter of one of my military friends. So you can find them all over the place. For my covers of Eastover and the Dragons of Silent Mountain, I actually found him on a website called Upwork. And it's one of those where you put in your requirements and then people bid or people apply for the job and then you get to hire them. So I found him. He lives in Pakistan, actually.
I guess they're intrigued by how people come together with their creative side, like their editors, how they find their designers, how they find all their people, because it's one of those things where authors are always going to need resources. We always need somebody to do something for us at some juncture.
Absolutely. And collecting business cards is a great way to start.
Yeah, and I want you to talk about that, because one thing, I run a book festival, and one of the things that I really try to talk to and impress upon authors is that, yes, while you're there to sell books, don't forget to network. How important is networking when you do events?
Oh, absolutely. Huge, huge. And even when I do some of these festivals, it's not even with other book writers. It's with the people, the other vendors that are nearby me and supporting them. Great time for Christmas shopping. But then they turn around and they'll support you back, and their post, you'll get into their Instagram post and those kind of things. So you start to share people and cross. But even within the book world, it is fantastic because you then have somebody to talk to and ask questions about, "Oh, I keep doing this problem. I don't know how to fix it." And then somebody else might have had the same problem, have already figured it out. Or you can share illustrators, or, "Hey, here's a really great editor that I really like. Try this person." Networking is great. That's why these writers' conferences and the book festivals like the one you do are so important for writers to get out there. And even if you're not selling your book yet, you're not ready, go meet these authors anyway. Just as readers, go meet the authors, ask them questions, ask them about their journey.
I'm a big fan of that, just getting to know authors, getting to know people, figuring out their processes, how they do it. Even where's the next place you're going? I want to know what festivals are you going to? Who are you getting in front of that maybe could benefit me as well?
Absolutely.
Do you work from a schedule? Like, do you plan out your books each year? Like, I'm going to write X amount of books this year. I'm going to write, about this one or that one. Or do you just let it happen organically?
My goal was one a year, and I was doing fine with that. And I was actually getting ahead and working on some things. And because, as you know, writing the book is only part of the work, because you write it like 10 times and then you send it out to your writers group and have their comments, and then you fix it, and then it goes back and forth. Then it goes to the editor. And in the meantime, you're looking for cover artists, you're looking for all kinds of things. And then you have to set up your book launch and you have to do the advertising. So it is very time consuming. So I thought one book a year was good for me. I thought I could handle that pace. And then I kind of got ahead. I got further ahead than I thought. And my husband was like, "Well, what are you waiting for? It's ready to go. Let's get it out there." And I'm really glad he encouraged me, because people are so excited to see the Dragons of Silent Mountain. I was at a festival this morning and had my book cover out there to have people give me feedback on the book cover and ask them about the font and what they like about it. It was very helpful to get readers' feedback. So, yeah, I'm putting them out about as fast as I can write them and get the marketing right.
And like, where do you write? Do you like to write from like your home office? Do you like to write from any particular area? Like, what's your writing ritual? Do you have one?
So a lot of people say you have to write every single day, the same time every day to get into the habit. That is wonderful for people that can do it. I cannot. It's just not my personality. So Friday is my writing day. I give that day to myself, and I'm not going to feel guilty My husband makes dinner on Friday, so I don't even have to think about that. I just go I do have a office with multiple screens, which I absolutely love, especially when it came to the research part. So I can have research on one and I can be writing on the other. And I do the computer for my writing because I like to be able to cut and paste. That's pretty much it. I lock myself down on Friday and that's my day to write.
That's actually pretty good though, to be able to lock yourself into a space. Yeah, I like to spread it out over the course of the night. Like once I put my, because I still have kids who are in school, they're small, and so it's like, okay, when they go to bed, then I kind of hop on my computer and just try to get the 20, 30, 40 minutes in each evening just to keep it consistent for me.
Yep.
That's how I write. Yeah.
Yeah, when my girls were little, I did the same thing, Chris. I wrote at night after they went to bed.
Speak to that a little bit in terms of, because you talked about writing on Fridays right now, but learning to be adaptable as a writer, because I think sometimes as writers we get kind of hung up that we have to have a hard and fast schedule that we don't ever deviate from. But life isn't like that, as we've seen over the last year and a half or two. Like life moves, life's fluid, things change, your entire ecosystem will change at home. Like how do you stay flexible, not get discouraged, but just find time to write?
I think the biggest thing is allowing yourself time to write. Some people feel guilty. Oh, well, I should be doing this. I should be doing that. Well, if you schedule it, put it on your schedule and say, this is my writing time. Well, then that's what you should be doing at that time is writing. And it doesn't always have to be writing. Sometimes it could be research. Sometimes it could be blogging, if that's what you do, or working on your social media or whatever you have scheduled for that day. And I know when I'm not in the mood to write, forcing it is not going to help. It's just going to make me grumpy and I'm going to create something that's not readable. So I like to have a little bit more flexibility in what I'm in the mood for. As a matter of fact, when I was writing Wind the Clock, which is the second Jackie Austen, I would write for a while and then I'd say, and then they fought. And then I would move on because I wasn't in the mood to write the fight scene. And then I would go back later and I would fill in the blanks on the fight scene or whatever. So you have to be in a certain mood to be able to do things, to make it come across as realistic.
So when you were writing Eastover Treasure, like, did you quilt?
Well, if you ask my husband, I'm always kind of engrossed in quilting. We have quilts all over the house. And so, as a matter of fact, my husband would kick me off my computer at like 5 or 6 o'clock so that I wouldn't be there all night. And he would make me go quilt, go do something else. And I would end up in my quilting room. I love to quilt. It is another one of my biggest hobbies, I would say. And I learned so much. But Chris, that goes back to what you were saying about learning from other people. I learned the same thing happened with my quilt guild. I learned so much more about quilting hanging around these ladies from my quilt guild. And when we would go on these retreats, we would all be sharing tips and tricks and how we do this. So it made a difference even there. But it was very fun to tie my quilt into Eastover Treasure. As a matter of fact, the back of the book of Eastover has a free quilt pattern in it that I wrote.
All right, so let's come in for a landing. Like, how can people find you, Dawn, the author?
I make it very easy. So everything is Dawn Brotherton Author. So my website is dawnbrothertonauthor.com, and that's my Facebook and my Instagram. And Brotherton is just brother, T-O-N.
All right, and then you said your book comes out in December. Do you have a date that you want to put out so that people can look for it?
I don't. What I would ask you to do is follow me on Facebook and I will let you know when it comes out. I'll have a bunch of posts, but I'm going to be at the Williamsburg Christmas Market and I'm pretty sure I'm going to have it there. That's at the beginning of December.
And then you also, you have a discount code that you want to offer people who may want to read your work.
I do. Anybody that goes to the dawnbrothertonauthor.com website and puts in the code with Chris Jones, you will get a 10% discount on anything on my website.
Thanks for your time today, Dawn. It was great to learn your story, like from the military beginnings to how you were able to transition all these life stories into books.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
And we will talk to you again soon.
All right. Take care.
Thank you.
How's that for inspiring? I hope you take action on one thing you learned in today's episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast and left a review on iTunes, I want to encourage you to do that too. Finally, be sure to visit chrisjonesinc.com to sign up for updates. Don't worry, I won't spam you. And we'll see you back here next week for another episode.